Thanks for being here.
Thanks for taking the time to actually sit down and do this.
Before I get into the role, I want to start here. If someone had met you 10 years ago, would they have ever
Uh-huh.
guessed you end up as a technical evangelist?
Honestly, yes and no. Probably leaning more towards the no. Well, 10 years ago, yeah, I would still say probably not. But at the same time, everything that I've done over the last 20 years plus has somehow led to this moment of time right here. And this past year didn't just feel like it was a new job, although it was and had to navigate everything that goes with having a new job at a new company. But it also felt like all the pieces were finally clicking together.
Take us back. How does this journey actually start?
Man, that's a doozy of a question. So it started way earlier than probably most people realize. I've been speaking in front of crowds for since I was 9 years old ish, somewhere around that, maybe even eight. And I remember gathering my friends, probably between 5 to 10 of us, on Sunday afternoons, rallying them up and somehow convincing them to sit down and listen to whatever I was disseminating. Really interesting that that was able to happen. In addition to that, I remember being 9, 10 years old and regularly speaking in front of audiences that were 2, 3, 4 times my age. And somehow people were still entertained enough, I guess, oh, to listen to me. I wouldn't say that I was, well, maybe I was a cute kid. I'm not sure what it was. But someone gave me a microphone and allowed me to speak time again. And so that blended with the fact that I've always been curious about how systems worked, how if you broke it, how was it going to put it back together? I was always fascinated and curious how people interacted with technology, how technology interacted with me. And so that curiosity, I would say it turned into a 20-year career within IT. And then the segment of security within IT, I like to say that security found me. I didn't particularly find it. I remember applying for crazy roles such as mobile forensic analyst, knowing that I only knew one particular tool, but crazy enough to shoot my shot. And so, given that deep technical work, giving that real responsibility that also equated to having real consequences if I did not do my job well. But alongside that, I kept pulling on different threads such as storytelling, such as video, such as playing musical instruments, and explaining complex things simply and then getting in front of people. Well, I already talked about that. And so those two paths, they ran parallel to each other for a very long time.
So, where does Google fit into this story?
Google was an accidental plot twist. So I remember when I applied for the role, I was working for a company called Isaac Summit. Shout out Isaac 7. They were very good to me. Peter Coddington, you, sir. And so I recall applying to this role at Google for Android Enterprise Trainer, which was the title at the time. And then shortly thereafter being hired, there was a shakeup in management. I say a shakeup. The manager went on to do something else within Google. New management came in and changed the labels to our roles to being enablement. And so it was Android Enterprise Enablement. I don't even remember what the actual term was, but something along those lines. And so little did I know the vision that this particular manager had. And so he asked me if I was capable of turning what we did on the road, because we went out, we traveled and trained people such as Samsung and partners of Android on Android Enterprise. And so him asking me if I was able to turn all of that, what we did, into e-learnings. E-learnings that had a video and interactive component to it. And so I really just, really, I stumbled into that role. And that role, it gave me a chance to blend my technical depth with creative production and fine tuning the creative production. I learned how to not just make video look good and not just use it as content, but as a tool that can enable people, a tool that can help teams communicate ideas clearly and communicate them confidently. And then looking back at that role, technical evangelism, before I even had the title for it.
So, when the technical evangelist role came along, what clicked?
So when the technical evangelist role came along, what clicked? It was the first role that didn't ask me to choose. Now that I'm saying that out loud, man, that's kind of impactful. It was the first role that didn't ask me to choose. And I didn't have to leave behind my IT security background. I didn't have to give up video. I didn't have to give up public speaking. The role said, bring all of it. The most the most interesting thing about this role and the description of this role, let's see if I can find it. But I remember it saying, and it's the only time that I've ever seen this, hey, theater experience welcome, or something along, I'm paraphrasing, but something along those lines. Anyway, so that role, it said to bring everything that I had. When I remember reading it, two things. One, I shared it with several people, and their response was, oh, how's the church going to pay you what you need? So, which is the whole technical evangelist thing, pun intended. But that's when I knew that this wasn't just a job, that this was alignment.
Was there a moment in this year that really stood out?
Oh, I've had a lot of moments throughout this year. Which one of them stood out? I would say the one role that stood out the most, or not role, the one moment that stood out the most was emceeing the Pelco Summit for a couple of reasons. One, the fact that being new to Motorola and them entrusted me just a few months in. I want to say it was probably about, man, it was longer than I thought. It's probably about 7-ish months while I was there. Man, maybe even 8, somewhere along those. And so I find that really interesting that they asked me to MC it. It actually was more like voluntold, but I was all game for it. The lights came on, the room, it was full. The energy was there. Well, the energy was mostly there. I probably bought the other half of that energy, maybe even too much for 8 a.m. But for the first time in my career, I felt completely in my element. I wasn't performing. I wasn't pretending. I was present. I was connecting with people. I was guiding the conversation. I was creating the space. Quick story. So my boss's boss's boss. Yeah, that's right. Boss's boss's boss. He came up to me, not even know he was going to be there. I met him one other time, Alex Castaneda. And I met him I think one other time. We sat down and we had dinner at a sales kickoff. And he came up to me probably about 5 minutes before I was supposed to go on stage. Not real familiar with him at the time. Once again, only been around him one other time previous to that. He comes, he taps me on the shoulder and says, man, I'm really looking forward to hearing you speak. Well, that kind of shook me just a tad, not a whole lot, but just a tad, enough because I was already a tad bit nervous. There was several of management, upper management that was in the room, and him just tapped me on the shoulder just a few minutes before I was supposed to go on stage, kind of just shook me just a tad. And so it probably took me about a minute once I walked on stage and started the opening remarks to where I felt as if I was completely within my element. And so that's the connecting point here. All of that was echoed out or culminated to this moment that I knew that this is exactly where I was supposed to be.
Coming from IT security, what surprised you about video security?
The learning curve. Video security is its own universe. And now it encompasses so many different other parts of physical security and what encompasses physical security. And learning it it's been ongoing. I went from barely noticing cameras before to now feel as if I'm breaking my neck trying to look from them just everywhere that I go. And now I find myself when I'm out in the wild and I'm looking at security cameras, looking at the brands that they are, and well, I won't talk about that. Great brands, but also the brands are a little suspect in the places to where, oh, this is a large organization, you're using kind of a lower value, right? And so it makes me think about those things. It also makes me think about who's watching this footage. What are they, what are they actually thinking? What decisions are being made right now? And so that curiosity in the mix with being able to always want to do my best and put my best foot forward as it pertains to public speaking, as it pertains to communicating well. All of that curiosity between that, looking at these cameras, learning them, and the nuances of it, video protocols and network protocols, I get all of that. I come from that world, so I understand that aspect of it. But some of the video security nuances is ever learning. And so the curiosity never shuts off with the several different components to what I believe makes one thrive within this role.
How would you describe the industry?
Ooh, this industry. This industry is it's massive. And somehow, although it's massive, it is incredibly small at the same time. People used to call physical security, but it's global. It's complex. It's deeply connected. And yet you have these relationships, and these relationships, they absolutely matter. I didn't really realize how much I mean, I knew that it mattered, but in the world that I was in, I was interfacing with a computer. And yes, when it comes to sales and things of that nature, I'm not a salesperson, so I can't really relay it from that perspective. However, the fact of how much people weigh in and give credibility to relationships is outstanding. And not only relationships, but reputations matter as well. And so, although this industry is massive, it feels less like an industry and more like a community. Yeah, I would say more like a community.
Anyone you want to call out?
For sure. So I remember when I first started, day one of this job, man, I should probably repost that, although it's been more than a year, but I should probably repost that. Where the recruiter from Motorola, who I interface with throughout this, his name is Dan Howard. Dan Howard, he is still hands down the best recruiter that I've worked with in my entire career. And he may not even know how much he stood out, but he did. He didn't just fill a role. I would say that he understood the why behind it, and he was super transparent with what I could perhaps expect. He told me that there was going to be changes that were happening, that this role wasn't necessarily just solidified as to what it was right now and it was going to stay the same. No, he told me that it had to be agile, and if I was capable of being agile with it. And that has 100% been the case. So to you, Dan Howard, if you see this video, kudos, absolute kudos. Additionally, this year has also come with, because this is a corporation and it's a large corporation, there's been a couple of different reorgs that have come and that have presented change. And some of the people who championed this role from the very beginning, for one reason or another, they have moved on. And that hasn't been easy. Still digesting that. And so it just hasn't been easy, plain to say. But the mission still stays the same. And I have to stay true to that mission. And that has grounded me throughout this process of just the different reorgs and whatnot. Because no matter what I am evangelizing, whether, no, right now, it's Pelco. It may morph into something else into the future. Who knows? I have no clue. However, the mission of evangelizing what Pelco, what Motorola Solutions through Pelco does and how they implement things, and getting the word out about security and the convergence of security, which resonates so well within me. I would say, man, it may even be a passion just of how IT and OT and physical, all those things just do just that, converge. So anyways, that has grounded me with just all the things that have transpired throughout year one.
You travel constantly. Doesn't that wear you down?
Yeah, for sure. It does. It does. But something strange happens. When I step in front of a crowd, when the lights come on, when the record button turns red, that tiredness, it disappears. It's the same as when we get sick and then we do an activity that takes our minds off of the symptoms of being sick, and we actually forget that we are sick within that moment. And then we stop doing whatever the activity is, and those symptoms, we become more aware of those symptoms. The exact same thing transpires here, where, once again, if the record button turns on, or I step in front of a crowd, that tiredness it disappears. People know me as the energetic guy. And sure, that's part of it. But underneath of it, I am pretty chill. Ask my counterparts, I am very chill. What really gets me going, just being in front of a crowd and talking and speaking, that gets me going as well. An additional driver, probably would be the best way to put that, is community. Creating authentic community, creating authentic culture, bringing people together and seeing people smile, and just smiles on faces. And I'm not a funny guy, not a comedian. We actually have one on my team. Kudos to you, Andy. I am not that person, but I enjoy seeing smiles on faces and doing what I can as a non-funny person to see smiles on faces.
How do you see your counterparts?
Yeah, I genuinely like my counterparts. Andy, Polina, they have been a great team to work with. I would say, because I was the first team member to join, so I tried to, and you know what? It was intentionally. So it was intentionally to create this culture within the team of being authentic, being transparent, being a safe space. And so I led with that, as I often do with all the communities that I am a part of. With my counterparts, we absolutely complement each other. We have our different strengths, we have our different styles, yet we are going in the same direction. And that balance makes the work better.
1 year in, how would you sum it up?
Yeah. 1 second. Year one wasn't about, year one was not about mastering everything. Year one, it was about alignment in every sense of the word. All the skills, all the years, all the curiosity, and getting the chance to turn the lights on for others along the way. And I'm looking forward, absolutely, of carrying it on in year two, which year two started November 4th of 2025. So we're already in year two and we're looking forward. I'm looking forward to carrying it forward, for continuing to turn the lights on as a technical evangelist.
Thanks for being here, and thanks for your time.
Thank you. Cheers.